Okay, so foreign debt instruments, foreign debt sold by a foreign company borrower, but denominated in the currency of the country in which it is sold. Euro debt is the is debt sold in a country other than the one whose currency it's denominated. So, for example, a U.S. company selling bonds, dollar-denominated bonds in Europe, or a U.S. company could sell, other currency denominated in. So, if it were the U.S. company was selling the bond denominated in euro, that would just be foreign debt. Um, so, but for the most part, there's a big market for dollar-denominated debt in other countries, not so much for a lot of other foreign companies, the currencies of other foreign countries. So, the bond ratings, AAA, AA, even A are considered extremely safe. The investment grades bonds are the lowest rated bonds that many banks and a lot of institutions can legally purchase or hold. So, let's see if I can ever get this to right. Okay. So actually, this is kind of inaccurate as far as I'm concerned. These are all considered investment grade. So Moody's anything above Baa, Standard & Poor's anything above Baa. So these are investment grade, and these are also junk bonds, but they are also referred to non-investment grade. So, and as we mentioned earlier, these bonds historically were companies that had declined in favor, but in recent years they have the issuance of junk bonds to finance mergers and acquisitions and so forth has increased. Just so you know, the 1980s were the heyday for this type of market. There was a crash, which resulted in the decline and a significant decline in the savings and loan market, and also a significant decline in the junk bond market. It still exists today. It's still used to some extent. But again, so this side we're talking about investment grade, with AAA being the highest and BBB being the lowest. S&P uses a plus and minus designation, with plus being higher and minus being lower. Moody's uses 1, 2, and 3. So 1 being better than 2, 2 being better than 3. Bond rating criteria. So financial strength of the company, collateral provision, so what's backing it up. So if a bond that was backed by some facility that could be easily sold would be fairly appealing to to somebody else, then that would obviously have a higher price than a bond that was, say, a debenture that was not uncollateralized. Seniority of the debt, so when the debt holder gets paid, restrictive covenants, restrictions on additional debt, and so forth would also strengthen the rating. The sinking fund or call provisions, so forth, those also can affect credit ratings. And then litigation. So they can, the likelihood of litigation can affect, settling litigation can affect bond ratings, for example. So, positively settling litigation can result in higher ratings, and losing a legal case can result in lower ratings. Regulations, federal regulations on a certain industry could affect that entire industry. They so this chart shows long-term bonds from 1990 to 2015. Um, the blue line is U.S. government. The red line is corporate AAA, and then the green line is corporate BBB. Much like we saw with when we're talking about short-term treasuries and long-term treasuries, the spreads widen out when we have economic trouble. We had the 2001 recession. We can see that the spreads between triple Bs and U.S. governments widen out. Very obvious during the financial crisis. So we see a little bit of that in the early 90s. Importance of bond ratings. Bond ratings is an indication of the default risk on the bond. Most bonds are purchased by institutional investors who are legally restricted to purchasing investment grade securities. That means BBB or Baa or higher. Changing in ratings affect a firm's ability to borrow capital. So long-term capital, it's going to increase the cost of using that capital. Bond valuation is like everything else we're going to do this semester. Is based on the time value of money. So the value of any asset is based on the present value of the future cash flows. So if the rate goes up or the yield goes up on that bond, then the value of that bond is going to go down. The model here is simply we're taking all the expected future cash flows, and we're going to present value each of them, and then add them up. We can do it by hand, or our calculator will do it for us. So we talked about the principal amount, face value, bonds, maturity value, so forth. Those all refer to the same things. That's the amount of money that the firm borrows. And is promising to pay it at some future date, the maturity date. The coupon payment is the interest payment on the bonds. It's a specified amount of dollars. It's based on the coupon rate, and for the most part, bonds pay interest semi-annually every 6 months. So all the calculations that you'll be asked to do on the exam will be semi-annual based. We'll start the next lecture on bond value.